Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's Appraisal Buzzcast. Let me welcome in Hal. We got a special guest for you today. Hal, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Jim. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm very excited to welcome in Alan Hummel today. Alan Hummel's teaching a couple classes at Valuation Expo, and we're going to talk to him about them.
Good morning, Alan. How are you, sir?
Doing fantastic. Thank you. Thank you much.
Very good to have you here. Well, you're going to be teaching a couple of classes at Val Expo, and we're pretty excited about that. But before we get into that, one of the things I like to do, I know everybody probably knows you already, but for the folks that don't, tell us what your history is with the appraisal industry. How did you get into this mess?
Oh, absolutely. I'm celebrating actually this year my 40th year as having signed real estate appraisals. And I count it as having signed real estate appraisals because I actually started at the dumb end of a tape measure. My father was an appraiser. And so when I was 10, 12 years old, I used to follow him around the houses and such. But my career started off in Iowa, where when you appraise everything: agricultural, commercial, residential. But my career path has taken me more along the residential route. I am a certified general appraiser, but I've always enjoyed the residential aspects. I think it's because my attention span is not quite as long as it's necessary, to do commercial appraisal. So
I hear you.
residential has always been the area that I've enjoyed.
I hear you. I too grew up in the business. I started holding the dumb end of the tape for my dad when I was 12, 13 years old. And I too am certified general, but I focus primarily on residential. One of the things I love about residential is just the ability to get out of the office, go out and look at what bizarro things people do with their homes, what interesting things people do with their homes. I've gotten so many really good ideas for projects just by seeing what other people do.
That's absolutely right. And I think, as you said, with the residential, there are so many options available to appraisers. If you like being out and about, fantastic. There's that opportunity. In Minnesota, we get some cold days. I can stay and do my review appraisals in the office those days. Today's advent of desktop and hybrid appraisals. If you have, you're getting older and you don't want to go out and climb those stairs, there's still
Yeah.
options for you to continue your professional career.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Alan, thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm going to take a quick moment and give a shout out to one of our sponsors.
Since 1978, LIA Administrators and Insurance Services has been offering E&O insurance to valuation professionals. LIA applies superior customer service, exceptional liability education from Peter Christensen, and unparalleled claim defense managed by Claudia Gaglione. LIA offers errors and omissions, commercial bonds, general liability, cyber liability, and real estate agents and brokers E&O. Visit liability.com or call 800 334 0652.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Hal Humphreys. You're listening to the Appraisal Buzz. Today, I've got Alan Hummel with me. Alan is going to be teaching some classes at Val Expo coming up here in August. We're pretty excited about that. Alan, one of the biggest problems I hear from my appraiser friends, and one of the biggest problems I deal with as an appraiser, is when you get that dreaded reconsideration of value. Tell us about this course, why you built it, and what it covers.
Absolutely. And reconsideration of value, it really covers a wide landscape. Some people call them addendum requests. Some people call them just questions. But what the one thing they have in common is they come at the worst times. And there are times that we're now working on an appraisal response where we thought we were done with the appraisal. So one of the things that we do within this particular seminar is talk about how do we mitigate? How do we keep from getting these types of questions in the first place? So we'll talk about different strategies when we're writing our reports, when we're communicating with our clients, everything, even when we're looking at engagement letters, as to how this is going to handle should it be come up.
Yeah.
We do know that they're going to come. So the other piece that we talk about is, why do we have clients asking these questions? How do they go about asking them? Sometimes a phone call, sometimes an email. And we want to talk about how can we communicate with the client during that process to make certain that we stay, we got to stay regulatory compliant, because when we're responding to an ROV, it's part of the appraisal. And so we want to make certain that we keep ourselves safe in our responses also.
And you mentioned earlier, if it's too cold outside and you don't want to go do inspections, those kind of things, you can stay in and work on some of your review work. You
Hmm.
know, review work, I think a lot of appraisers have maybe the wrong take on appraisal review. It is there to make us better as appraisers. So when I get a reconsideration of value request, um, oftentimes it comes in the middle of the day when I'm crazy busy. I've got 7 properties to look at. I'm just like, not now, please. But 9 times out of 10, when I get that ROV, it causes me to stop and think about how I described things, how I explained things, um, and seen in the proper light. That makes me better as an appraiser, and it's not a bad thing.
That's absolutely right, Hal. We don't necessarily have to take a question from a client as an indictment on our
Right.
work, uh, but we can use those questions to make our work better moving forward. Not all of our clients are appraisers. And many times we write our appraisers if we're or appraisals as if we're talking to other appraisers. And we know, we'll talk a little bit about USPAP intended users and borrowers, but the fact of the matter is, borrowers and real estate agents are going to read our appraisals, and at times they're going to have questions about them. So, to your point, Hal, many times as I'm looking at the ROVs, just as you indicated, I use that as when I write my next appraisal, what can I do differently to make certain this does not happen again?
If you can preempt the ROV with really clear and concise explanation up front, everybody wins.
That's exactly right. And when we talk about that clear explanation, it's not just, it's at the time you write the appraisal, but even writing that ROV, it's very easy to be snarky. Well, of course I use the best comps. Why are you sending me these cells? I've already told you these are the best ones. But being able to professionally write that response in a manner that gets your point across, answers the question. And there are times, quite frankly, where maybe I actually, looking at the information they presented, say, that makes sense. And I want to change my opinion. And that's the thing that we'll talk about is it okay for an appraiser to change your opinion, during a reconsideration of value? And if so, how do you do that?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, as an appraiser, I don't have an ego in the value conclusion, right? It's like if somebody brings me new information that was not available to me or that I didn't consider thoroughly enough or whatever,
Mhm.
that's helpful to me. Now, you used the word snarky earlier. There are times when I, as an appraiser, am busy and the questions are just honestly kind of stupid, and I want to be snarky.
Yeah.
My first draft response is often RTOFR.
That's right. That's
Read the
exactly it.
original report. But at the end of the day, taking the time to take a breath and be professional in your response, I think is the appropriate way to do it, and it's the better way to do it. This course is a 3-hour CE course. It's $109, and this is going to be offered pre-conference at Valuation Expo. Is that right?
That is absolutely right, and it's one of those live classes, and that's the one thing I love about the appraisal conference is that it is, the education occurs during that 3 hours. It also occurs in the hallways and the
Yeah,
discussion that we have in class.
I love it. I love it. Well, let's take another minute and give a shout out to one of our sponsors, and then we'll be back in.
The Appraisal Institute recently launched its Instagram page, AI's latest presence on social media, joining Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and the Face Value podcast. Visit and follow AI's Instagram page for another way to access valuation news and association updates. www.instagram.com/appraisalinstitute.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Hal Humphreys. You're listening to Appraisal Buzz. We've got Alan Hummel here with us. Alan is going to be offering some pre-conference CE at Valuation Expo this year. If you need some additional continuing education above and beyond the 14 hours that you get by coming to the conference, great chance to do that. Alan, you've got another course you're going to be presenting, market disturbances, market analysis, and atypical markets and cycles. I think it's fair to say for the past 3 years, we've been in various states of atypical markets. Talk to me about that course.
Absolutely, it's one of those classes where I started writing it after I worked with some folks during Hurricane Katrina. And, it was an event that the hurricane has now occurred, but we're being asked to appraise properties immediately thereafter. And what kind of market data do you have for that type of experience? And then we roll that into after forest fires, after flooding, after major events like the 9/11 event, pandemics. And so we get to a situation where we're not in our normal cycles. And one of the things that we're going to talk about is using history to talk about what might happen in the future. And that's what we're going to do in this particular class, is look at these different types of atypical cycles. And then as an appraiser, what data can we use? Sometimes it's local. Sometimes we have to go outside of our immediate area to say, this has been experienced somewhere else. What happened in the marketplace there? And then bring that back to our immediate market.
I love it. That's going to be a lot of fun. Alan, thank you so much for being here today. We're excited to have McKissick Learning presenting courses at Val Expo. Looking forward to you being there. Let's see if Jim Morrison is still around. Hey, Jim, do we by chance have an anonymous appraiser question that Alan could help us answer?
We do. We have a great question for Alan. Before we move off of those classes are limited, so that we only have room for 50 in each of them. So if people want to register, go ahead and book those now. When you register at Valuation Expo, just add these classes, these pre-conference classes for you. All right, so our anonymous appraiser question will be a lot like the market disturbances. It says, I'm doing an estate appraisal of a vacation house in a vacation market retrospective to 6 months ago. I have a great comp, similar in so many ways. It closed 40 days after the date of death. Can I use it? I'm getting conflicting advice. So what do you guys say?
That great question is something I see people up against on a regular basis, be it assessment, state appraisal, and such. And I'm going to tell you that it becomes an assignment condition because there are some regulations in the state appraisal and ad valorem that will put parameters on when the sales can be used after an effective date. From an absolute appraisal techniques, it is okay for an appraiser to consider a sale that occurred after the effective date, because we make market condition adjustments every day, taking a sale that occurred 3 months ago and moving it forward. We can use those same techniques, taking a sale that sold 3 months after the effective date and bringing it back. Now, there are certain things, as I said, that you have to make certain that your client, the assignment allows you to use that type of technique.
Yeah, and what I would say to that is, if you're dealing with an estate, there's a very real chance that you may have some jurisdictional exceptions to consider. If a court or a probate court or a judge says you cannot consider sales after the date of death, then you can't use that sale. And that means if the date of death is today and you've got the absolute perfect comp on tomorrow, but the judge or the court says you can't consider anything after the date of death, then that is not a sale you can use. So it really depends on the situation. But I think, here's the thing. Alan and I are both lifelong appraisers. We are vultures for information. We want data to work with. If we've got good data, we can draw good conclusions. And if a good data point is a day, a week, 6 weeks out, that is viable and good to use, and we would like to consider that.
That's correct.
Jim, I hope that answers the question for him.
Yeah, and if anybody else has any other anonymous appraiser questions, send them in, comments at appraisalbuzz.com. We'll ask our experts. Alan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Good to be with you. Look forward to seeing everybody in Vegas.
For Jim Morrison and Alan Hummel, I'm Hal Humphreys, and that is your Appraisal Buzz for this week.